G at DevNexus, and I'm here with Roberto from Netflix. We are going to talk, I hope, about testing and other topics.
Hey, hope so too.
Welcome.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Roberto Perez. I'm a senior software engineer at Netflix. I'm really happy to be here. Excited to talk about testing, Netflix, JVM, whatever it is.
I'm super confused because I'm doing all the cameras and it's totally throwing me. So I'm doing the cameras and asking the questions at the same time. My first question is, what are you doing to help developers in terms of testing at Netflix? What sorts of things are you up to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are multiple facets of this. It goes from how to give you proper tools and documentation. And when I say tools, is two things. Actual libraries that you might be using to write your test, but also infrastructure. Think about, can I optimize how you run your tests for you, run them remotely, etc. What we have learned so far is that people tend to avoid writing tests because they don't know how to, or they think that they don't have the right tooling, but it's not that they don't intend to do it. So they feel like drag, like writing tests and running tests is slowing me, rather than, this is something that I enjoy. So we are trying to switch that mindset for engineers. So we are investing a lot of testing overall in 2024, really. 2025 is like the 2 years of testing, or what we call increased confidence and frequency of deployments at Netflix.
So you and I were talking a little bit earlier on about the challenges that face developers when they don't want to write tests specifically. And it was interesting to me that you said that there's basically two things. There's the tooling, and developers need the tools in order to be able to write the tests, and they need to have the confidence of picking the right tools for the right things, but also the mindset of like, what kind of test do I want to write, and what is the appropriate test to write right now, and how can the tools help me with that? So how do you think you can, are you looking at the challenges of how to get developers into the mindset of how to make those choices and how to make it easier for them?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. That's something that we are learning as we go, to be honest. What we suspect is that I don't suspect, we know that people have different conceptions for tests. Like they think about, classic layers, unit tests, integration tests, etc. And what we have found is that there is no commonality on how people think about these things. And they all believe that complexity varies a lot in between them, even though that might not be the case. So what we are trying to do is really helping people to understand what kind of tests to write for their inner loop. And by inner loop, I mean things that you do constantly closer to the developer. Think about continuously building your project, verifying new changes, bug fixes, etc. And then the outer loop, which could be actually launching a full stack with your application, and then run some verifications. That could be functional, that could be performance-wise, etc. So we are focusing more, in the case of my team, on the former one. How to help people to write tests in the most optimal way, and how to make them feel, I will say happy, really, and enjoyable, because at the very end we talk about productivity engineering, and it's something that is really hard to measure. And when you start thinking about it, it's really a lot about the human side of things, the qualitative aspect. Like, how do you feel about coming to work every day and get your job done? Like, you don't have to tell me I love it, but as long as you don't tell me I hate to do this, I'm super happy, right? So I don't know if that answers the question, but really it's about investing on shifting left as much as possible in the developer life cycle, and try to optimize for whatever gaps we find.
That's really interesting, especially we talked about developers being happy, and I think that so my talk about testing is based on the premise that, generally speaking, developers don't enjoy the testing side of stuff for various reasons. So I'm interested in, if you are providing them with the right tools and some support and a little bit of education, are developers happier to write tests after you've given them that kind of support? Are you seeing that, or is that still something that's going to come in the future?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it varies per developer, to be honest. So one thing that we did at Netflix years ago was investing a lot on the outer loop. And what that I mean is, as a developer, you will kind of incentivize to move quickly, be super fast, right? Like innovate right away. And that meant sacrificing verification in the inner loop. And what we led the company to was to, okay, you can push some code to production, you're going to deploy it, and we will have all the machining in the world, like the famous chaos monkeys, everything related to canaries, roll back, roll forward, you name it. So we're going to make your life easier if you spot a bug. But 10 years later, that's not the case anymore. You are a more mature company. It's not only about velocity, but also quality. You have more members. You cannot just go and say, oh, I'm going to sacrifice 1% of Netflix traffic anymore. That doesn't make any sense, right? And also, software industry has evolved. Like you see in this conference that there are many Java frameworks, there are many Java utilities, people want to adopt them. And when you try to automate things for them, well, typically you go to the point of, okay, I can probably rewrite some code for you, here's a pull request. Please review, and if you look at, if it looks great, merge it. But because we don't have all this inner loop testing, there is no confidence to get that change. So what we learn from people is gauging and talking to them, really interviewing them and understanding how they feel about receiving changes within their team from different teams or partners or automated processes like refactoring. Some cases that used to live in this situation of canaries and such, they didn't feel confident. Like they were like, okay, I need some manual judgments, I need some human interaction here just to verify that things work. And what we did is go to them with some potential ideas on how to improve not only the tooling, but also the guidance, training. Documentation is not enough. It's also about sitting with them, do workshops, and I wouldn't say teach them because they know how to do it, but they probably want to know how to do it the Netflix way. Because at the very end, we have our own internal tools, internal wrap on top of a Springboard, you name it. At this point, what we have learned is that they feel that if we were to deliver all this effort in the upcoming months or quarters, they are going to start feeling more confident. And again, confidence is different for you and for me. And this is why it's very sentimental, very qualitative. But if an engineer feels like that, I'm okay with that. Like, if they have, like, I don't know, 70% test coverage, but they feel confident and they don't have regressions, there is no point of investing more into that, right? Because they are delivering value, they are doing it in a pace that they feel okay with it, and they have the right tooling and the right documentation and the right training going forward.
I think that's a really interesting point because for me, the reason I like tests is because it gives me confidence. If I have a whole bunch of automated tests, unit tests or acceptance tests or whatever, then I make some changes and everything's still green, it fills me with confidence. And I'm always surprised by developers who, like you were saying about like just put stuff out there and just push it out there. I understand that mentality of let's get features into the hands of the users, but doesn't it make people feel nervous that they don't know if it's working until a user finds out whether it's not working? And so I always like testing from a confidence point of view. It's interesting to hear you say that the confidence is like a key thing there. And also the pairing thing, or working with people and helping them. Like, when I'd read about unit testing, I'm like, oh, unit testing seems good. I don't really know how to do it until someone sat with me and was like, here's how I write my unit test. This is what's going through my mind when I write the tests. And I think that's a key thing, I think, with testing. So obviously, like the frameworks and the tooling is really important, but the mindset of I need a test, what should I be testing? How do I approach the test? How do I break the tests up? That, I think, is a little bit more challenging and difficult to scale that because you need someone to teach that stuff.
Yes. I will add that one approach that we are thinking or trying out at this point is trying to identify what people call champions, which is really find folks that are passionate about this space, regardless of how they approach it. Like, let's not talk about if you do certain practice. It's really about verification of software. If you are passionate about it within your team, you probably will be that person that will sit next to other and try to, build that team culture of verification and making sure that things, you raise the bar, basically. That's how we want to scale ourselves, because there is no way that a small team of 4 or 5 engineers can go and try to teach how to test something that we don't even know, right? Like, it has to scale in a company like Netflix or any other company. There are companies that are way bigger than us when it comes to engineering footprint. So I think it's really important, with any technology, to try to have a team composition where you find these individuals where one or more of them are passionate about this and help other people to also create that feeling and liking for, in this case, testing. If you don't have that, well, it's going to be tough because typically it will be like, oh, there comes another, let's say, person that tells me what to do, and I don't want to do it, right? So it's really interesting finding those champions or those folks that are passionate about the topic.
Yeah, I was speaking to a bunch of people when we've been talking about velocity and developer productivity. I have found there are some organizations where there are passionate individuals. They're passionate about, like, for example, one of my passions is flaky tests and how I hate them. And I've found other places where there's like one person who really cares about flaky tests. And in some organizations, they're just shouting into the void and they just feel frustrated. They're like, this is a problem, no one's listening to me. So if you've got a team like your team, identifying those champions and enabling them and giving them a voice and sort of stamping them and saying, yes, they are saying the right things, you need to listen to this person, that's very, very valuable to do that kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think as an engineer, when you want to grow, that amplifies your scope. Because you are really not only delivering what people tend to fall into the trap of product and code, you are also changing the culture of a team or a company, and that's something that it's really hard to do. When you do it, like, it's probably once in a lifetime opportunity most of the time. So if you are in the situation of, oh, I dislike that nobody cares about this when I'm passionate, maybe it's not the right thing to just leave for something else. Maybe you could try and see where you go. Because to be honest, there are companies where that single person that is the passionate ends up being the classic platform engineer that addresses the problem for the bigger company. Because when people say platform engineering, they think like this is an army of engineers, and in reality it's just super lean teams with 3-4 engineers trying to tackle this problem. So it doesn't scale, it doesn't grow linearly, really. So you can be the person, and that's a good way to grow, in my opinion.
I really discovered platform engineering when I moved to Gradle and we started talking to a bunch of platform engineers, and I was like, what do you people do? Like, well, we do these changes which impact everyone, and I found that really fascinating because, you know, as a developer, we're quite often working on our one problem, and we have a problem with the test or the build or the IDE. I worked somewhere where it took 3 months to get set up with my IDE, which is crazy. But a platform engineering team, like you say, like, if you fix a problem, you impact a whole load of developers. And then the ripple effect of that productivity is, look, this is the 10x engineer, right? The 100x engineer. If you can fix a problem for 100 engineers, you've just improved 100 engineers' productivity. It's not just yourself. And platform engineering, I think, it's just cool to be able to scale productivity that way.
Yeah, totally agree with that. It's really fascinating world. Sometimes people ask me previous conferences or venues, like, what is a platform engineering, or how do I get into productivity engineering? And for me, productivity starts from simple things. I would say simple, but they are not simple. Like, I don't know, you have a really nice terminal CLI setup, like .files, whatever, you share with people. Now you're changing the lives of dozens, hundreds of coworkers that now have better shortcuts. That for me is productivity right away. Like, you're making those engineers have a better workflow on a daily basis. So that's how you start looking into these potential champions, right? That they do things that they detect could help other folks, and those are the ones that are passionate. And it doesn't have to be something complex. Small steps, more of them, and incremental deliver. It's the way to go, in my opinion. And it's the same with testing. Like, you can start with simple things like improving documentation, training people, and maybe at some point take it to, you know, some tooling that goes across the company. So that's why I said that scale doesn't matter, to be passionate about these things.
I actually think that's a really good note to sort of end this interview on, because you managed to wrap everything up. But do you have anything else you want to mention in terms of testing, platform engineering, or anything?
Yeah, I mean, testing is really important. Try to not oversee it. Try to invest on verifying your software. Obviously, I'm very opinionated on metrics side. Like, I'm not like a huge believer that you should have like 100% test coverage, for example. I'm more pragmatic, I would say, where you should do what gives you confidence, whatever that means for you, that when you push something to production and when your release screen, you feel like, okay, I'm in a good shape. If somebody comes and do a change, it's gonna be fine because I trust my test suite, right? That's where you want to be. So always do that because it's going to save you headaches. The last thing you want to be, regardless of where you work or what you do, is being the hook for some really complex bug that you're going to trace down for hours or days or even weeks. There are multiple of them, right? And it's going to pay off, like verifying in advance. It also helps you to how you approach software development. Like when you are testing, you will find that probably your design could have been better. So it's great, yeah. And obviously treat your test code as production code. Right. I know that many people say that, and it's hard to do.
It's hard to do.
Be honest. But that should be one of the goals, for us.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. Thank you very much for appearing.
I appreciate the time. Thank you.